So we're live. I'm here with Kalen. Kalen, how's it going?
It's going all right. How about you?
It's going well. Yeah, nice to hear from you. Thanks for connecting. We've spent the last 47 minutes doing sound checks and tests, and it's been fun getting to know you in that sort of informal uh,
Yeah.
tech tech support mode kind of thing.
Oh
But
yeah.
we didn't have to get your roommates involved, so it's all good. We got it figured out. And so you learned about my channel through Nathan Ormond, one of my
Mhm.
guests, and I understand you're a young Catholic living in Ottawa. But I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, if you would, please.
Okay. So for for whoever may be listening, my name's Kalen. I'm a Catholic, but I don't want to say but because I mean as a Catholic I should be adhering to Catholic doctrine and align with all the Catholic teaching. But one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of come on here and talk with David here because I do have some questions about my faith, and I assume that he's better educated in it than I am, and I haven't always been a Catholic actually. I was only confirmed into the Catholic Church just this past Pentecost, and I mean I didn't just kind of do it just oh why not? I mean it was an informed decision, and I spent like the past uh, maybe entire year, just or several months studying. I've been going to uh, a Catholic church for the past how many years? It used to be an Anglican church. It's now part of the Anglican Ordinariate. So it's in communion with Rome. But yeah, that's me. I'm a Catholic. So this is Catholic versus Catholic. So but that don't worry. That doesn't mean it might not get spicy. Don't worry.
Yeah, so yeah, it's technically speaking, this is not Catholic versus Catholic because that would be a pre-recorded thing, and I can make it all. I could
Okay.
make myself sound like a genius by editing out all my all my mumbling and fumbling and all the tangents and what was I talking about again? I can't, all that stuff. So this is
Yeah,
CVS live guests, so we've got to watch what we say, and
for
I, I
sure.
I had to make my hair all pretty for you today.
uh,
So let's start by talking a little bit about your avatar. I've got it on the screen. When I stop talking, I switch over to the desktop and I can see
yeah.
your avatar, your icon. Just talk a little bit about that and the background for that. We discussed it a little bit off air, but
Hmm.
I want my listeners to hear, and I want to hear more of the story because it
More
sounds
about
really
it.
interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot more that goes to it. So I can't see what's being shown, but I'm assuming that it's there. Anyone who's watching this now or in the future is able to see this image, which is the most important part is that it's just a rectangle and a square to the left of it, or its right, however you want to say it. And that image was based off of a photograph that I took when I was about 15. Just being, I'm an artist somewhat. I went to an arts high school, so uh, being a 15-year-old, you're full of anxiety. You got all that teen angst, and you want to express that in artwork. So I had a taste for really, I guess, darker artwork, darker things. It's people like seeing art that speaks to them, and that was just kind of the art that spoke to me at the time. Certainly not anymore. I'll tell you that. But so it was a grungy image of there's a photograph of the reflection of a door that was a nursery door and a first aid box. And in the picture it was just lit weirdly. It just looks kind of creepy. So I used it, being like, "Oh, this is an awesome picture. I'll just use it in whatever." And so what happened was that was when that was many years ago, and that was taken. Um, the picture was taken right beside a classroom, and just this last year, I had a class in that classroom, and in that class there was an image that came up, and the date of that image, which was 1315, was very similar to the number that I named my photograph, which was 71315. I mean, anyway, so the number connection right there was I saw that was the first thing I noticed, and I'm like, oh wow, I've seen that number before. Then I remembered I'm in that classroom. It's like, oh yeah, that number corresponds to the picture I took of the nursery door in the first aid box. So I look to my left and I can see it right there because I'm sitting in the classroom. And then I look at the artwork on that's being presented, and it's a picture of the Theotokos. It's the Holy Blessed Virgin Mary and holding Christ. And I look at that, and I look at the first aid box and the nursery door and the number. Everything's clicking, and I realize that there's some pretty interesting connection that's being made here. And it was, and then just that right there, it just stood out to me because it's like this is such a crazy, just a crazy coincidence, you know. And ever since then, I've looked at my artwork. I've looked at that picture with a whole different light because what the picture symbolizes, the way I see it, well, it's a nursery door. It's, you know, nursery is a place where you take care of children, and it's a door. So Mary quite literally is the door for Christ into this world, and Christ is our first aid box, and he's our the divine physician. And so, and this is only the half of this, or maybe less than half, because basically what we did, the class that I was in was from my college, which is called Augustine College. If any of you listeners have heard of it, or maybe not, it's a 1-year liberal arts program where we study the history of Western thought. So we study the art, the philosophy, the literature, all of these things that have been staples in Western society. We study the history of it, and you can kind of see, like, really, I mean, when you look at things, I'm not super academic, but I am, I guess, a low tier intellectual. Like, I like looking at the big picture things, and especially when you study the Bible, it's insane when you just like take a step back and look at the big picture. And so, yeah, studying here at Augustine College kind of it permanently, like, I like to use the word scarred because it's pretty it describes it pretty accurately because it's like something I can't get out of my head. But it scarred the way I think, but in a very positive way because I feel like I can think properly now. Because prior to this, I'd think in really modern ways, and that's just because I've grown up in a modern society. I've grown up, thinking in whatever categories, whatever terms that I've been given. I guess I'll get more on that later.
Yeah. So I want to focus on your journey from non-Catholic to Catholic and talk a little bit about the context in your family. Are there Catholics historically in your family tree or not? And what sort of religion was in the home, if any? Just talk a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, actually, it wasn't like I'm just this kid with no faith background who became Catholic just for whatever reason. I did grow up, actually in my mom's mom was Catholic, but but she actually converted back to she turned away from the faith for I can't remember whatever reason, but it must have been something to do with whatever. I don't know the story, but anyway, so my mom did not grow up Catholic. I'm not sure how she grew up, but she's Christian for sure. Same thing with my brother. My son. Oh my goodness, my father. His parents are very, 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 like, they are very devout Christians. I believe they're going to an Anglican church. I think they're going to a Lutheran one, but yeah, my grandfather's a pastor. They're two very, very great people, very devout Christians. And so my father, he grew up Protestant, and so that's kind of just how I ended up growing up. We went to a Baptist church. I actually grew up in British Columbia, out west. So I went to a Baptist church for the first maybe 8 years. Yeah, first 8 years of my life, and then when we came here to Ottawa, my dad came here to Ottawa because of the college, actually. And my entire life revolves around this college. I mean, more accurately, it revolves around Christ and God. And God used this college to say something to me. And so, anyways, the teacher that coincidentally taught the art class that I'm talking about that changed my life, the teacher for the art class went to an Anglican church. And so my dad and my family just ended up going to that church because my dad was good friends with this man. And So yeah, we went to that church for the past. For I've been going to that same church, same building, I guess same community of people, more or less, for the past 12 years, and it was an Anglican church, and it became part of the. It was 2012 maybe that it became part of the Anglican Ordinariate. So we have traditional like Anglican music and hymns and stuff like that, but it's in communion with Rome, and theologically we believe in the Catholic teachings and we believe in the Catholic Church and all that. It's very much still very Catholic, but with the Anglican flavor, I suppose you could say, which I'm personally a fan of.
Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah. So I grew. My parents they actually didn't join. The entire parish kind of all became confirmed at once. My parents didn't actually go though. They actually spent another. They didn't officially come into communion with Rome for another. It was a couple of years, and then they went. Then my younger siblings kind of went, but I think this is because our parents did. But then me and my older sister, we both did not. We didn't do anything. We kind of just we went to the church and all that, but we wouldn't take the Eucharist because you can't do that unless you're a Catholic. So we were kind of going to the church and not really using the sacraments or anything. But then so it was a matter of years of just being like that, not really, not really engaging. I mean, I've been an altar server this whole time. Actually, I still am. So it was kind of awkward to have an altar server who actually isn't even confirmed Catholic at a Catholic church. But that's how it was because it's a small parish and they needed me, quite honestly. So what happened was that me and my sister, we decided, we did our research. We did all the kind of reading and preparation that we had to do, and then we became confirmed in the Catholic Church just this past Pentecost. So that's 6 months ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I'll have to get your sister on here next.
Yeah, no, she'd be another great person to have on. Actually, maybe I'll talk about that. Her and her fiance. Oh man, you need to meet her fiance. He grew up a hardcore Protestant, and he's also becoming Catholic.
Wow.
Because he is also someone who searches for the truth and the truth.
Yeah. So, what were the stumbling blocks, if any? Usually, it's the papacy, the infallibility, and Mary. What were the stumbling blocks for you? And to a lesser extent, you can talk about your sister's stumbling blocks if they differed significantly.
Well, I'm not sure if she had the same stumbling blocks or not. I think her and I both had a similar one with regards to Mary. I mean, I recognize the importance of Mary, and I pray the Hail Mary sometimes, but I've actually never. I prayed the Rosary once, but I didn't do it very well, and I still to this point I've never really properly prayed the Rosary, and it's something I feel like as a Catholic I should be doing, but even though I'm confirmed Catholic, but still part of me is like still kind of scared of it almost, which is not a good sign. But that wasn't really my biggest stumbling block. I think the biggest one for me was for me the biggest one was the Eucharist. Actually, like it's really hard to get my mind around that physical presence of Jesus Christ is in this bread and this wine. Like that is like if that's true, like that changes everything.
Yeah.
Like if it's I can't remember who it was, but some Catholic, some intellectual priest or someone who does talks. he pretty much said like if the Eucharist is not the body and blood of Christ, then to hell with it. Like it doesn't matter. It's just some symbol. Like, bruh, who cares? I mean, symbol is still something, but it's like in Catholic Church, it's the actual body and blood of Jesus Christ, and that's a pretty big deal. And that still is not something I don't want to say I struggle with, but something I'm very cautious of, and I take it very seriously. I'll tell you that. Like if I feel slightly, even the slightest bit convicted that I should not receive the Eucharist, I do not. So I take it seriously, but to intellectually like affirm that it is this is like it's still difficult for me. But I by faith, I'm taking that's what that is.
Yep. That's what it's all about. It's all about faith. You don't need to, you know, have some sort of supernatural vision, mystical
Yeah,
vision every time. I mean, when I am at mass, I am exercising my faith, right? And
yeah,
I know that there's a chance that I'm wrong. I belong to a false religion, but that's just because I'm fallible. But
hmm,
I do believe that I belong to the one true church that was founded by the God man Jesus Christ, and therefore I believe as the church tells me to believe. And I don't
hmm,
find it hard to believe, but I'm not getting I'm not getting a spectacular mystical experience every time I go to the
yeah,
Eucharist, right? So we need to bear in mind that it is the faith that is being exercised. We're asked to have faith, to believe, and to show reverence, and
hmm,
to be humble before the sacrament, and to appreciate that moment, and the gifts that are offered by Jesus Christ in the sacrament when we are humble before the sacrament. And I can tell you,
yeah,
it is the highlight of my week, the Eucharist, because I take it
hmm,
seriously, and it's I'm sure it's the same for you. And over the years, you and I will grow closer and closer to Jesus Christ in the Eucharist and elsewhere, but especially in the Eucharist. It is the source and the summit of our
yeah.
faith. Of our faith. That's how Vatican II puts it, and how several ecumenical councils before Vatican II have put it. And many saints have talked about the Eucharist as being the source and the summit of our beautiful faith. So.
Amen. I agree 100%. So yeah, and like honestly, like, and it's almost like it was at first. At first, it was like one of the stumbling blocks. Like, it's hard to believe, and now when I see it in that way that you put it, and I realize how important it is. Even if still sometimes I'm like intellectually, I feel like I'm prideful sometimes, and yeah, I'm not humbling myself, but I'm still thank God that I still have the ability to obviously to refrain from taking Eucharist if I feel like I'm in a state in which I can't receive it. And so, and yeah, it's like when I realized that, like, that's what it is. Like, that's why would I how have I not been Catholic my whole life? I've been missing out, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I want to
it
talk. Sorry, do you have something to
oh
say?
no, that's all I really have to say about that.
I really think this is a good point to talk about the sacrament of reconciliation, confession, and
Hmm.
how was it for you going to your first confession? How did you feel going in? How did you feel coming out? And how frequently do you go to confession? Uh,
Hmm.
Month to month now? Is it once every 2 weeks, once every week, once every month, once every six
Yeah,
months? How often do you go?
I well, I could tell you, I should probably. I actually had plans of going sooner than later, just because I think it's a good thing to go once a month, and that's what I've tried to do, but I inevitably have failed. So for me, it's more of a once every 2 months thing that I've done. And I think again, I've only been a Catholic for about 6 7 months, so I've probably been to confession maybe 4 times, maybe 5 times. Can almost count, but
Yeah.
definitely no more than 6 times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So not a whole lot.
Okay. And are there do you have your sort of short list of your favorite sins that you want to get rid of
um.
without going into nasty details?
Well, there are recurring ones, but let me think about this because I think just the whole I understand how sacrament reconciliation how it is very like it really is an important dude. It's so important. It's like I that's another reason why like if a product like if other churches don't have this, like what are you doing? Like it's I can't explain with words how important I really do believe it is. And anyways,
Hmm.
so, but every time that I've done it, though, I'll tell you that it's been more or less the same. Where yeah, I come in with my with the list I write down, I prepare beforehand, doing my examination of conscience and all that, and I actually it's like I forget most of it when I walk out. Like I forgot like. I mean, I don't forget. This is not how it should go. I don't necessarily forget the sin itself, how it impacted me, I forgot whether I confessed it or not. Which I tried to read off the whole page. So it's like, well, shoot. Well, I hope it's the same thing for my priest. I hope he also doesn't remember any of this. But no, seriously, it's like I'm just in another state where I'm almost emotional. Like just to put it bluntly, I feel almost emotionally detached. Like I'm just like I'm a robot. I'm programmed to say these things and then leave. And I can tell you that that might just be because it's in a setting with another person and it's kind of awkward. But um, I've had several experiences where I've really felt I on a really deep level, like I'm in total tears, and it's like I need to cry harder than what's physically possible. Like I've had several. I get these every so often, incredibly emotional experiences where I realize that, like, you know the story in is it Hosea where God asks Hosea the prophet to have a prostitute
Yeah.
wife.
Yep.
I realize that, like, I am that whore wife,
Yep.
and I've been unfaithful to God, and I really feel that on a personal, like, on a deep level, and I'm like, it's those are the moments I wish I could feel like that when I'm
Yeah.
actually in the confessional, because I feel like that's what you ought to be feeling when you're confessing your sins. But so
Okay.
I have those. I have many of those experiences outside of confession, but within confession, I'm like emotionally detached.
Yeah, it's stage fright too, probably. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I really I'm jealous because I want that contrition. I want those tears. I've never had the tears.
Really.
I might be emotionally blocked, or
Yeah.
I might be just a typical man, or I might just be, spiritually immature. But it's a
Yeah,
necessary.
I hear that a lot, and people do talk about, like, man, I wish I had those feelings. And to that, like, just the other day, I was listening to another podcast. Can't remember his name, but he's a lot better known. The program is called Pints with Aquinas or something,
Oh, okay.
and he was one guy was talking to the other, and he was and one guy was like me, who's had many of these experiences, and the other one was the more heady intellectual kind of guy. He says, well, I don't have, or at least he said he doesn't have as many, but he wishes that he would have those. And I really thought, like, the first time I ever had, like, I realized, crap, this is what's happening. I I I almost begin to idolize that experience. I
Mm.
begin to see, like, almost like that emotional experience becomes my own personal sacrament, as in, like, a mystery. It's like it becomes a sacrament, something that I want to be getting it, and it is deepening me in my faith, but it's not a real sacrament that's institutionalized by the church. It's just an emotional experience I'm having, and it's like I almost start to I almost search for those experiences now, and it's like it's not real if you're searching for it. It's real when it's given to you by God.
Yeah.
And yeah, and also, I mean, like, you briefly mentioned that maybe I'm just your typical man or whatever, but yeah, I feel like, personally, I'm probably a lot more emotional than your average dude as well, but that's just me.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I
So
mean,
I'm saying, keep that in mind. It's not a bad thing that you don't experience those, because in my experience, I've almost idolized those experiences. Like,
yeah.
it's
we
weird.
we all need to accept reality as it is and accept the graces that God gives us.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I don't chase after the emotion. I mean, I could make myself cry. I could work myself up to tears
Uh huh.
artificially. Artificially, I could do that. And I remember back in the early days of my marriage, my wife used to tickle me until I cried, sort of as an emotional therapy, because she thought I didn't have access to my emotions. So she would tickle me
Oh,
until I couldn't handle it anymore, and I broke down
yeah.
with tears. But haven't done that in a while, and yeah. But I don't chase down emotions, and
Yeah.
I don't necessarily trust my emotions. And there's a lot of literature in the church from the saints and the church fathers saying that if tears come naturally, great, but we shouldn't necessarily lean on our feelings as such. We need to lean on our faith, and on our intellect needs to lead to a certain extent, together with our conscience, the intellect, our reason, and then the emotions, of course, come along because we're human beings, even those of us who are macho, manly men who don't cry so often.
Yeah, for sure.
I was being facetious there, but yeah. So let's keep exploring your faith journey, because you're such a young convert. You're such a young convert.
Yeah.
What did your family and friends say? Did they say this is just a little step from your Anglican, Baptist church, Anglican church, and you're just taking yet another little step, or was this a categorical change for your family and friends that you and your sister took the leap into full communion with Rome? Is it a big deal, or a medium deal, or a small deal for your family and friends?
Pretty small deal. I'll be completely honest. It's a big deal for me, I'll tell you that. But I mean, like, the rest of my family was already Catholic. But I mean, as in my father, my mother, my siblings, the rest of my family is not Catholic. I actually have no idea how they see that change. But just in general, just when it comes to interacting with other Christians who are not of the same, who aren't Catholic, it's like it's not, to me, it's not that big of a deal. I see that you're there. It's not about what church I won't say legally, but like what church you belong to. It's more about how devoutly you're practicing it. And I do believe that the Catholic Church holds a fullness of faith. I'll tell you that. But if you're there are many people who are Protestants who are more devout than I am. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it many times. I think there are atheists that are better Christians than I am. I mean, it's not a big stretch. I mean, this is part of being a Christian, is accepting reality as it is, and knowing where you stand on that ladder of ascent. And the mystical ladder is intimidating if you read the great mystics of the church, or even if you just read any kind of achievements of any of the saints. I mean, the young martyrs, or anyone. I mean, I'm scoring low on every metric. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's I know that feeling. Yeah, I actually have my sponsor, as I got confirmed. I guess he's technically my godfather now. He gave me a book, The Ladder of Divine Ascent by St. John Climacus, and it's about, I think, have you heard of it?
Yeah, I just bought it for my Kindle because my friend Kieran Lisney recommended it. He and his brother Aidan Lisney, you might have heard them on my podcast. They're starting, I think they're starting, or they may have already started, a podcast where they're going to go through that book. Actually, that's the content of their podcast. I hope that they're doing it. I hope that it's either started or it's going to start soon. And if they start to get cold feet, I'll have to put some pressure on them to make that project happen, because it sounds exciting. But I might the process.
Check that out, actually.
Yeah, well, I am in the process of reading the Philokalia, which is the Eastern Fathers.
Yes, that's what I want to read. Yeah.
Amazing. It's the most life-changing book I've read. It's a collection of writings, but it's the most life-changing Christian writing that I've read since my conversion. During my conversion, when I was studying philosophy for many years as a hobby, I discovered obviously the Catholic philosophers and St. Augustine, and he's the one that converted me to God and finally into the church. But so St. Augustine is my man. He's my favorite saint because of that.
And, same here.
Oh yeah, really. And so I was really, really deeply affected by his writings. And then, of course, all the saints, I just dove in and I read everything. And there are a few highlights on the way, but this Philokalia it's a different approach. It's an Eastern approach. It's a mystical approach, and it's really, really practical. And that's why I'm excited to read it. It's also very crippling in terms of shame and guilt. Like, I'm such a loser, and this book really humbles me. This book, more than a lot of the other books I read, were like, oh yes, I can be right there with you in your speculations or in your love and devotion and all this about Mary and all these books I read. But this book is really putting the target on me and my thoughts. Am I controlling my thoughts? No. Am I
Yeah.
controlling my appetites? No. Am I praying as I should? No. Am I making vigils? No. Am I standing, as a penance? No. Am I taking on voluntary penances? Not too many. I mean, very few. So it's very
Yeah.
sobering. It's very sobering, and I highly recommend it if you're ready for that kind of thing.
Oh man, I don't even know if I'm ready. Because no, I understand what that kind of. I mean, like in this whole experience that I mean, again, Augustine's one of my favorites because I mean the college I went to, St. Augustine College, is
Yeah.
named after him for a reason. Um, and what was I saying? Yeah, just like throughout this college, reading, learning all the literature and philosophy, all the stuff. Even just that was a small taste of this, and it was already like, oh man, too much. uh,
Well,
so
you're a young person. How old are you? 20?
I'm 20, yeah.
So you've got your whole life ahead of you. I converted at age 39. Imagine how embarrassing that is. And
Wow. Yeah.
there's so many saints that have lived and died at the ripe old age of, well before my conversion even started. But there are other saints who converted late in life.
Yeah.
Saint Augustine himself complained that how late have I loved you, Lord?
Mm.
So I'm in good company there, but of course I'm an embarrassment next to him. But no, there are saints who convert late in life, and it's not about comparing ourselves one to
Yeah.
the other. But I am jealous of you that you have this conversion experience, and God willing, you will nurture this faith, this fledgling faith that you have. You'll
Mm.
nurture it. If you take anything away from your talk with me, it's that I want you to remember that you can lose your faith. You have to take responsibility for this faith you have. You have
Yeah.
to protect it. You have to build it up. Because if you don't build it up, it's not just going to remain flatlining constant. It will decline. You need to work at it. You need to do your reading. You need to do your prayers. You need to love God. You need to express your love to God always. Because
Mm.
if we're not improving, then we are going backwards. That is one thing that's for sure in the spiritual walk with God, right?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much. Like that, that is something that I need to hear, and it's something that's very important because I can tell you, it's just there are so many distractions and so many ways to go wrong that
Mm.
that could lead you away from the faith. I mean, it's I mean I just last night I had this dream that I was going. It was all snowy and icy outside, and I was climbing this giant hill or mountain. And at the top, it was suddenly became. It was really beautiful. It was like all grassy. The wind was blowing the grass around. It was beautiful, and it was yeah. I was in tears, and I was like thanking God, like thank you God for giving me, no, for putting me here. And then I kind of sat there looking, and it was like an ocean shoreline or something like that. And then suddenly, just people started appearing without. It's a dream, so that kind of stuff happens. But people are appearing without me noticing. And I'm talking with these dudes and they're these hippie kind of guys. They're passing weed around, and I'm telling them how I'm like, I can't do that anymore. Like I've, my experience with it has been, it's been detrimental to my faith, and it's just bad for my brain, anyways, as a young person. And they shunned me, and it was like emotionally, it hurt so much, like having these guys that, I mean, honestly, it was a dream, so things are kind of unrealistic. But I just met them, and yet I had this emotional connection to them. It's like I see myself in you, and I feel like I am like you are a brother to me. We might not be on the same level spiritually, but I do love you and I care about you so much. And you just shut me away because I was sticking to my Christian principles, and I was just, and it's so easy to. And I had that weird dream just literally last night, and I honestly I kind of had a feeling it's going to come up in this conversation because, and this is where it is because that kind of those distractions. It's so easy to be part of this world. It'd be so nice to be that. I want to be that cool dude who will hang out with people and do whatever they want to do, whether it be smoking weed or whatever. Being the chill new ager kind of guy. How easy that is to distract you from an Orthodox Catholic faith. It really is. I'll tell you, that's my biggest temptation in my life at the moment, and it doesn't seem to be leaving me. It really is. It's difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask you because you are so young. I wanted to ask you about puberty and girls and sex and all that sort
Yeah,
of stuff. Is
that
that
wasn't. I'll be honest. I mean, that was something I struggled with, as most people probably did. But I can tell you, like, that I'm very thankful to God that that really is not a problem in my life at the moment, and it hasn't been for the past maybe 2 years. So
yeah, because when you join the Catholic Church, the women just flock to you. You've got
join the
like
Catholic Church.
you've got so many women to choose from because they all want to sleep with you, right? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
But I mean, no. But actually, the Catholic teaching on sexuality is actually like it's a lot more. It's a lot more clear and concise and strict, and I'm thankful for that. And it makes sense. I truly think it is the right. It's the right way. It's right. It's proper doctrine. So
Yeah.
that's how I put it. That's kept me on the straight and narrow with regards to that, with just sexuality and stuff.
Yeah.
But with regard, like, I think my big struggle has to do with, I mean, it's got to do with like new age thinking and
Yeah.
philosophy, and I guess psychedelic drugs. Like, I was really, I didn't get into them, but they've been something, because going to the high school that I was at, Canterbury High School. It was such a prominent thing, and it was, people when they're in their 17, 18, especially in an arts high school, you're going to encounter a lot of that kind of stuff. And that's always been like I think for me, my biggest struggle is trying to avoid them and not be too sucked into that kind of culture, because it really does not, what is it? It's not nurturing you at all.
Yeah.
It damages you spiritually, and people don't recognize it. People like, do drugs or whatever, and they're like, oh, it makes you free, or makes you think freely and all that, and it's like, not really. It
No.
just makes you a slave to yourself, I think.
Yeah. I did a lot of not by anyone's standards. I'm not going to impress anyone in the amount of drugs I did, but I did get involved in drugs in my adolescence and
Uh-huh.
drugs and alcohol. And luckily, I have a weak constitution, so I couldn't push it too much. But definitely a gateway to the demons, and
Exactly. Yeah.
I got into the New Age, and I
Yeah.
finally after 25 years of New Age stuff, I ended up being an explicit Satanist, like the Church of Satan, sort of
Wow.
Anton
Yeah.
LaVey kind of thing. But no, it all starts with sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Yeah. Yeah. For
One or
sure.
two, take your pick. Whatever works. Like the demons, they want your soul. I mean, they'll offer you anything: money,
Yeah.
women, drugs, whatever you want. Whatever works best. And Saint Ignatius of Loyola says that they will always attack at your weak point. So if your weak point is food, they'll suggest nice food to you. If your weak point is
Yeah.
women, they'll give you like opportunity with women. If your weak point is money and power, that's what will be presented to you by the explicit permission of God. They go before the throne of God and they say, "Look, this guy's weak for this. Let me tempt him with that." And God says, "Go ahead,"
Wow.
right? Or
Yeah.
God will allow a certain amount of temptation, just the right amount
Yeah.
that we can handle with His grace.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 And I understand. Like, the Book of Job kind of talks about that, or something like that, right? Or
Yeah,
yeah, something similar happened in Job, but
yeah.
where.
The demons got explicit permission at the throne of God
Mhm.
to wreak mayhem in the life of Job and his family, and
Yeah.
that's one image in
For
the
sure.
Bible. Yeah, something to bear in mind that
So
we're being tested.
I mean, yeah, like that really, I've never even realized, like, it's such a simple idea. It's like, oh, they're gonna attack your weak points, but that helps me realize what my weak points are,
Mm.
and it's, you know, and you can ask yourself, like, I like to take it a like level deeper and be like, why do you have these weak points? Do we just grow up with them, or, it's interesting to think about, because I think the weak points I've had, and it's like, I mean, I think the whole reason why I've been sucked into New Age thinking, or I was, and still sometimes I guess kind of struggle with it. Um, it's because and more philosophy and just like looking at with the looking at the world through this lens that it's like pseudo intellectual and it's like emotionally speaks to you. It's really hard to explain, but like I'm sure you understand what I'm saying.
Yep.
Where it's not what the Catholic Church is teaching. Anything else other the philosophies and ways to understand the world that you get that are not from the Catholic Church, or Christianity as in general, have very much negatively impacted me, and it's because like growing up, I found that this is I do believe this is where a lot of like I think partially why I'm here and why I'm at whatever level I'm at with my faith stems from this. Because when I was a kid, like I've always like I think as long as I can remember, like I might have been like 4 or 5, it may be 5 or 6, but I will like lay awake at night with my eyes closed and just think about like what's it like to be dead. Like the concept of infinity, right?
Mm.
Unendingness. What's that like? And I always try to picture like what would that feel like? And I'd start getting dizzy, and it's like you can't your brain can't comprehend it, right?
Mm.
So there are these things that are outside your grasp that you have an idea of, but you don't know whether or not you're gonna face those personally. Is it very well? I mean, like if I at the moment were not a Christian, I believe that life is meaningless. I could easily just be like, I wouldn't care about what happens after death. Infinity, as I understand it, would have no impact on me because I'm never gonna experience that. I'm only gonna my unconscious like if you're dead and there's no life after death, you're just unconscious. It's just like before you were born. It won't matter. But as a kid, I grew up with a Christian faith. I didn't understand. I don't think I understood heaven properly though, because I'd still think about, man, what would it be like to see darkness for eternity? Well, I know this sounds like edgy and all that, but like this really is. And like my emotional experiences where I think about how I've turned away from God, like it stems from this lack of meaning that I look around this culture and I see it everywhere, and it's really sad. And it's just like within these past couple of years, I'm so grateful that he's given me meaning. Like the meaning of life was there all along, and it's just like you can't see it. Are you acquainted with Martin Buber?
Martin Luther or
Martin, no, not Martin Luther. Martin Buber. He's
Buber?
a
No,
he's a Jewish philosopher.
no.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna talk about this for a minute because it ties in with my picture and it ties in with what I'm talking about right now. Is that so? Ever since I was a kid, I've always I even now I still think about people who don't have like meaning in their life. Like what do they do? If you look at Ecclesiastes, it's pretty clear that everything under the sun is vanity. So that's all this temporal pleasure. Like if your life is sex, drugs, rock and roll, it's all gonna fade. And Ecclesiastes, it points out how all is vanity, and it's just like everything under the sun. So above the sun, that's where God is. Outside of time, that's where things do have meaning. And it's reading Martin Buber and kind of helped me understand. He points out that he talks about like I barely understood half that book because it's really hard to read, but I did get some out of it, and it's like he's a Jewish philosopher, but he almost like explained the Trinity. Like he talks about how you can't have love without a lover and a beloved, and it's like
Yeah.
love is the thing between the lover and the beloved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what my picture that I have. That's what I'm getting at. Is that you have two separate things. You have I guess you can see it as Mary as the door and Christ as the first aid box. That's two separate individual things, and that love relationship between them, that's what gives anything meaning. And but when you for those listening, earlier he said he asked me if my image was God the Father, and I said sort of, because that's the way I do see it. I see it that way as well. That big rectangle is God the Father, and that small square, that's us. And life is meaningless if there is no God. That like there just isn't meaning. I'd like someone to find a substantial way of explaining things, like, oh, you can make your own meaning. It's like that's a whole another set of responsibilities you got to give yourself a substantial meaning. And if you don't, you'll be dissatisfied and you'll die alone. And me, like it's really depressing. Like one of the reasons I'm Christian is because I've felt this, and and this ties in with why I've had such like emotional. I've had so many emotional experiences with God and realizing how I've turned away from Him and all that. It's because deep down, it's like that's kind of where I've been. My deepest existential kind of despair comes from this sort of thing. It's like if you're listening and you think about, and whether if you're not a Christian or you're not spiritual in any sense, I'm telling you, man, you're missing out on something. If you, I don't know what your relationship with your parents was like, but tell me about the love you had for your parents, the love that they had for you, and tell me if that means nothing. It was I've never been a great, like, I wasn't always the greatest kid growing up, but um you know, we've all been children, we've all been bad, but one day I did something in the past years ago, and I confessed to my mother about it, because it kind of impacted her, and I felt bad about it, so I confessed to her, and then she looked at me and she said, "I still love you." And it was after, and it's like, just think about that experience right there. It's like I felt this terrible guilt and shame that I can't recover from. And she said that, like, she loves me. It doesn't matter what I did. She loves me unconditionally. And later, like months and months later, I still have that on my mind whenever I talk to her. Honestly, like it still haunts me. But took me grocery shopping. I know it sucks kind of, but I mean, like, I'm more or less over it. But what I'm getting at here is, one day she just took me grocery shopping. I'm still young, like she's buying me groceries and stuff. But she said, you know, she did this very kind thing for me. She drove me home, and then she just said, like, "I love you," and I hugged my mom. And I just woke up. I just walked upstairs and I just cried. I realized, like, that right there, that's God. That's that's the love that God has for you. And it's like, if life is meaningless if that doesn't exist.
Sure. Absolutely.
So
This
that,
is this is
yeah,
the I mean, you mentioned the book of Hosea. I mean, that's a really apt citation,
yeah,
because that wounded relationship and just how loving and merciful our Father is in
hmm,
heaven. Few people, I think, have experienced it. I'm I'm delighted that you had a sort of direct experience of that love and that forgiveness, and in in a concrete example
hmm,
with your mother, and also in your conversion on a more spiritual level,
yeah,
directly with the Trinity and through sacraments and the church and so on and so forth. You've tasted a lot, but
yeah,
as you go through life, you're going to have uh, more challenges,
for
and you're
sure.
going to have to build strength upon strength, because if you end up in another situation where you feel like you're burdened, you're going to need to remain flexible and sensitive so that you don't become a hardened middle-aged man that's concerned only about financial security and sensual
Yeah,
pleasures and stuff like that, right?
hmm,
So you have your whole life ahead of you, and I want you to remain flexible and sensitive to what matters most, which is that with that relationship with God, which you saw in analogy in your
yeah.
mother
I've seen
and
it with
all
my
that sort of
mother.
thing.
I've seen it with that picture that I was talking about earlier. Like, I see it. You see it everywhere once you really think about it. And that's, um and yeah, just talking again about that book by Martin Buber. This guy is not even, he's a Jewish philosopher, but he's still got, like, all truth is God's truth. I think what this guy was talking about, writing about in his book, is true. That you can't have love without a lover and a beloved. It's just that just relationship. It's just like two separate individual things, people. It's like life is meaningless without the person, and it's. I was thinking, I had this picture in my head about like people when like if there's a point where everyone realizes it and like oh we're all one blah 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 all this new agey stuff. It's like that's what people want, but they don't realize that they can't have that without Jesus Christ. Like I think that and that's one of the reasons why I've it's strengthened this. All my experiences have strengthened me in the Catholic understanding of things. Is that we need Jesus Christ, the Logos, the Word made flesh. We need Jesus Christ to order everything, like to like literally order everything. Because otherwise, if it's just us fallen humans on our own trying to reconcile ourselves to ourselves, I almost don't know if that made sense, but trying to be all unified and be happy on ourselves. All I see right in that picture is the little square.
Hmm.
All of humanity encapsulated together. If it's all of us, I just see that one square. We're not in relation to anything bigger. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to explain, but
Yeah, well, I
it's
mean, what comes to mind is building on a solid foundation of
yeah.
Jesus Christ, and not building our fancy edifices on shifting sand, because in the moment, like one generation of human life is so fleeting that we could build a marvelous tower with all kinds of mansions in it, and
Uh-huh.
it's built on shifting sand, but it's only with the passage of time. It might be the next generation that sees it collapse.
Hmm.
It's only if we build on the solid foundation of Jesus Christ that we will have something that endures. And the whole point of philosophy, much less theology, the whole point even of pagan philosophy
Hmm.
is how to live the good life, how to have enduring happiness. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just reading today about the Alexandrian school in the early church,
Hmm.
and Saint Clement of Alexandria and his pupil, his star pupil Origen, who went astray a little bit from orthodoxy, but there was a strong emphasis in that of exactly what we're talking about. Like we need to build on the
Hmm.
solid foundation, and the Greek, the Saint Alexander, excuse me, Saint what did I just call him? Saint Clement of Alexandria said that
Hmm.
Greek philosophy was what do you call that with the family bond? Not a testament, but we have
Uh,
we have these different compacts, or not contracts, but we have like Adam and Eve had one, and then there was one
covenant.
with covenant, exactly. uh,
Hmm.
Saint Clement of Alexandria was saying that the Greek philosophy, like the high point of Greek philosophy with Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, that
Yeah.
was a covenant before Jesus Christ came. That was a sort of covenant with these Greek people, and that
Yeah.
there was truth in there that will lead to the Catholic Church eventually with the incarnation,
Yeah.
which was forthcoming.
Wow.
And Saint Justin Martyr said something very similar earlier, I think, in the church history. He said that all truth belongs to us Christians. There's nothing true that we should shy away from just because it comes from a pagan, or
Yeah.
from even from an atheist or whatever. Like
Exactly.
it all belongs to us, and it all points ultimately to Jesus Christ. And this is why I like Vatican II, the writings of Vatican II, because
Yeah.
it emphasizes the fact that there are elements of saving truth which belong to the Catholic Church, but which are outside of her visible boundaries. And
Yeah.
the whole purpose of that is to ultimately have a way of bringing people into full communion. So it's a really mysterious economy of salvation, but
Yeah.
it most definitely involves saving truths of the Catholic Church, which are without, like, outside of her visible boundaries. So I just wanted to reflect on
Hmm.
that. It's sort of a
Yeah.
general theme that I'm sensing from you.
No, for sure, I agree, and like, and even just all that reminds me exactly of what you were saying earlier. It's like how as Christians we have to like you accept the truth as it is, and like what was it? You put it in better words, but you take reality as what it is, and you just accept it because ultimately that's what truth is. It can be it's painful, and that's one of the things that I find a lot of certain worldviews, philosophies. I think like sometimes they just want think about positive things, nothing can hurt you, whatever. But it's like, no, the truth is actually brutal. And like, it's yeah. I was gonna say when I see evangelical Protestants and I see them being like, oh, singing. I mean, like it's good that they're singing praises to God and all that, but they're so like smiley, and it's part of me is just thinking like, oh man, you don't know how much it's gonna hurt. But then again, at the same time, it's like those people are probably gonna spend less time in purgatory than I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's honestly, it's just I'm just a not old but young cynical bastard.
So how are you going to avoid purgatory? That's my question to you.
How am I going to? By going to confession as much as I can, and I won't. I know I won't avoid it inevitably, but I do know that I just. I mean, I don't even. Let me put it this way. I know purgatory is the only way out of purgatory is heaven.
Yep.
So I hope I go to purgatory. Is what I'm going to say. And I know it's gonna be painful, but I know that the only way out of purgatory is heaven, and that's what matters to me.
Yeah. A lot of saints say that if you aim for purgatory, you'll end up in hell. So you have to aim to avoid purgatory by going straight to heaven. Be a saint. You have to be a saint in this life. Okay, you
No,
have to
dude, I
aim.
think
You have to
that's
aim for that.
that's
Aim
just
for
as
that.
painful.
Aim for that. Aim high, because
Yeah,
if you aim low, guess what's going to happen? It might not be
yeah,
a happy outcome. So just aim a little bit higher every day, and gather steam, gather strength, gather grace, build your faith. Like I said, build, 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 build. Always upbuilding. And when your friends are trying to distract you and draw you away from the faith, which they
yeah.
will, like, whether they're conscious of their animosity or not doesn't matter. You don't need to worry about if they understand what they're doing and why. Okay,
Hmm.
Jesus said, "Forgive them; they don't know what they're doing." So you have to do the same thing with your friends and even your family. If they start trying to pull
Yeah,
you out of the church, you're going to have to persist, and you're going to have to suffer with Jesus Christ, and you're going to have to stay in the church and keep your faith strong.
yeah,
That's my urgent, strict warning to you,
yeah.
and my friendly advice.
Yeah, thank you. I'm literally gonna write that down right now. Because like oh man, that's some of the most terrifying advice I've ever been given, and yet I know it's the most true.
Yeah. There is in the Second Vatican Council also, I know I'm harping on that a lot, but a lot of
It's
beautiful
okay.
documents. A lot of beautiful documents. I recommend you read all 16 documents, especially because it's very controversial among
Uh-huh.
so-called conservative Catholics, traditional Catholics, right-wing Catholics, whatever you want to call them, sedevacantists and whatnot, that Vatican II is no good. But it is a beautiful set of documents, a beautiful council. And one of the things they teach is that there's the universal call to holiness. I mean, this is the traditional teaching, right? But they're
Yeah.
emphasizing it at Vatican II. The universal call to holiness. We have to be saints. And one of my favorite saints is a very modern saint of the Opus Dei, Jose Maria Escrivá. I don't know if I
Hmm.
pronounced his name right, but he was a Spanish saint, the Opus Dei. He really emphasized that too. Becoming a saint in your mundane, ordinary, boring, unseen, unpublicized life.
Yeah.
That's where it's at. That's where it's at. And even many of the great saints, like uh, Saint Therese de Lisieux, she was a hidden
Hmm.
saint. Many of the saints were hidden saints,
Yeah.
suffering for Christ, suffering for their fellow sinners, and suffering for their own sins first and foremost, and then suffering with whatever excess they have of penitence and penance, applying that to
Yeah.
family and friends and even their enemies. Some of the most touching stories you can read of the saints is applying their indulgences and all their extra graces
Hmm.
to their enemies, like mortal enemies, people that are hating on them and trying to kill them, and in some cases successfully killing them. Really mind blowing and very inspirational for us little Catholic
Yeah.
dweebs.
Man, no, for sure.
So, do you have any other topics that you really wanted to cover before we wrap up? It's been about an hour here, and we did 45
Yeah.
minutes of tech support before the call.
Yeah. Um. No, in all honesty, it's like I thought about like, oh man, what am I even gonna say? I kind of said all that I wanted to say. It might have not been as clear as I wanted it to be, but For anyone who's listening and who's still listening and thinks what's up with this guy, I swear I'm sane. It's just I can't always articulate things properly, and some of what's led me to a deeper faith is some of the ideas are kind of abstract, but yeah, that's so I've said as much as I think I can say.
Okay. I'll just ask you one sort of controversial question.
Yeah.
Are there areas of your Catholicism where you think that you are straying from the faith? For example, you don't believe something that the church proposes for your belief,
Yeah.
and it's a project that you're working on. Like maybe one day I'll be able to believe it, but right now I can't. Is there something where you feel that you are unorthodox, or are you committed to
Yeah.
giving full assent of your mind and your will to everything that the church obliges you to believe?
Oh man. Because let me put it this way: the things that I've talked about and I've described, and like my experiences, very very much a lot of my understanding of God and all that, it comes from my personal, like a majority of it comes from my personal experience. But much, I have to be fair though, quite a fair bit of my personal experience has been educated, and you know it's come from me studying, philosophy and Christian history and Christian philosophy. Like it's so it's not completely uneducated. I'd say that if it weren't for my experiences here at this Augustine College, that I wouldn't have. And I believe God's work through this college. Like my entire life, seriously, revolves around this college. It's weird.
Hmm.
Um, but without the experience of being here, I wouldn't have the eyes that I do right at the moment. I wouldn't see things. No idea. And here's the thing: it's like there's many outside of Augustine, like many outside of this college's. Okay, how do I put this? There's many things that are not even Christian that aren't don't have to do with my education or anything that have also spoken to me. And then again, also it's like God speaks to people in certain ways, and I believe God's spoken to me through my experiences and through all this. So yeah, the reason I say any of that is because I mean you asked me how because I really it's something as a Catholic that I should think about how how strictly or not strictly how much I'll humiliate myself to adhere to exact because like I agree that if I am heretical in any way, I need to get that corrected, and I know that the Catholic Church would do what it can to help me through that. After all, the church is truly it's a hospital for sinners like myself. So um, I can tell you, I still struggle with pride. Like I'm still even if I'm a weirdo. I'm some ridiculous big guy who can't articulate things or anything. Even if I should be humbled lowest beyond anyone, I'm still full of such pride,
Yeah,
and
get
and
used
that
to
I
it.
think that's what I struggle with. But
Yeah, you got to get used to that. Unless you get some extreme graces from God that's going to humble you
mhm.
permanently, like in a permanent way, and make you a saint that will be canonized, like that level of saint where you're recognized as a saint. You're going to have to struggle with pride. That's the big one, and it's going to
Yeah,
probably last until the day you die. That's the sort of pessimistic view.
yeah,
The optimistic view would be that yeah, just keep availing yourself in a worthy manner of prayer and the sacraments as per the church's instructions, and you'll
hmm,
squash, with God's help, you'll overcome your pride. That's the optimistic view.
hmm,
But I've been Catholic for 10 years, and I don't think my needle has moved. Maybe I'm more prideful now than ever, right? Like
hmm,
I'm not improving. I haven't been improving on that metric. So don't have too high of expectations, although God can do what he wants with you. I mean,
amen.
he could humble you tonight, and you could be permanently humbled, right? But
Hmm.
I don't want you to be too disappointed if tomorrow morning you wake up and you're still proud, proud and
Still,
vain.
yeah. Oh boy.
Just brace yourself. So
Yeah.
that's it. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Appreciate you sticking through all the technical difficulties and all that. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Really nice to meet you. Really nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
And nice to see your face. Right, I'm looking at your face right now with this green and yellow. This artwork. It's the face of the artist that I'm looking at. But I'll definitely have you back in the future, and I'll be keeping track. We'll keep track by Facebook and email and all that sort of thing. And I'll be praying for you. And I don't know if you know, but I do enroll all of my guests in a perpetual mass. So you're going to be receiving the graces of the mass every day. You and your immediate family, until the end of time, you'll be receiving these graces. What you do with those graces is up to you, right? But they're going to be poured down on your head like so much blood of Christ, right? It's just like inundating you every day. What you do with it is up to you. But I would recommend that you tune into that fact and you avail yourself of all that grace, and you make use of it, take advantage of it, and become a saint, and then come and help me to be a saint. That's the idea. It's to spread the grace and to become a saint, and to ultimately be happy with God forever. So thanks again for coming on, and take care of yourself. God bless, and we'll talk soon. Okay.
God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.